StraightallDay.com.
Number one rule of marketing: location, location, location. Now, what does this mean? Now, if you know anything about the real estate game, then you've probably heard this term, and I'm borrowing it straight from that space. Having the right house in the right place is more important than having the right house by itself. Even the house that's not quite perfect but is in the right location might have a better shot than an amazing house in the wrong location. So today I'm going to help you understand that the marketing world works, at least in this sense, the exact same way that the real estate world works. That location is the most important thing. And of course, I'm using this as a metaphor. It doesn't necessarily mean geographically like your address or what city you're doing your business from necessarily. But let's get into the point so you can understand it fully. Point number one. Topic once again is the number one rule of marketing is location, location, location. Number one, a big piece of marketing, folks, is about how and where you show up. That's a big piece of marketing, how and where you show up. Now, what exactly does that mean when I say how and where you show up? So, for example, as a professional speaker, when I first started my speaking career, I used to respond to a whole lot of these things that they call for speakers or request for proposals, which is basically a casting call where some event is happening and the organizers of the event, they announce it kind of through a press release or something like that, hey, we have this event coming up. We're looking for people to speak at this event. If you would want to be one of our speakers, fill out this form, tell us who you are, what you're going to talk about, answer a couple questions, etc. We're going to collect all these forms, and then we're going to choose our speakers from all the people who submit the form. So they might get 150 submissions, but they only pick 15 speakers. So I spent the early part of my non-basketball professional career filling out a lot of these calls for speakers, some of which I was chosen for, many of which I was not, but that's how I got started to build some traction in my career as a speaker. And I appreciate that experience of having done that, because those times that I was chosen to be a speaker at events, I went and did my thing. And same thing that I tell you all the time. If you got to go in cold to try to get yourself on to a stage, go do it. I got myself on stages through those calls for speakers. I did a good job when I got on stage. This is a key point. Did a good job when I got on stage. And those free events that I did, many times when you do the call for speakers, you're not getting paid. So many times when I did the call for speakers, I was not paid. But many of those free events led to paid events. And the only reason they led to paid events is not because they were doing me a solid because I had done the free ones, so now we owe you some money. No. The only reason I got the opportunity for the paid ones is because I did a good job on the free ones. If I had been trash or mediocre at the free ones, the paid ones never would have happened. So I did a whole bunch of these calls for speakers when I first started my speaking business. I responded to a lot of them simply because I had no other ways to get my foot in the door. Nobody knew me. I didn't have any connections. I didn't have any network. Like I told you in yesterday's episode, my friend that I was talking to, who his whole thing is a whole lot of networking. I didn't have a network. I had to build a network. I had to make myself get known by some people. And again, through filling out a whole bunch of these cold calls for speakers, I was able to get myself chosen. And again, many unpaid engagements led to paid engagements. So this was a good way for any speaker to get started, even to this day, especially if nobody knows who you are and you don't have a proven track record and you don't even have any proof of you standing on the stage giving a good speech. I had none of those things. I was able to develop them, and I have plenty of it now simply because I started by gaining some traction by going out for the cold opens that said, hey, anybody interested in speaking at these conferences? Now, I'm telling you all that to tell you this. To this day, today, as I'm recording this, and when you're listening to this, I do not fill out calls for speakers anymore. I am retired from the call for speaker business. If I get sent an email or somebody comes to me and says, hey, there's an event coming up and we're putting out a call for speakers, if you're interested, I'm not responding to that. And if I get in an email, I have my executive assistant, or if it comes to my inbox, I unsubscribe from that newsletter. I shouldn't be getting those emails. I'm not filling out a damned call for speakers for anything ever again. Now, why am I not filling them out anymore? And what does this have to do with the topic? All right, if someone wants me to speak at an event, they need to know who I am, or they need to be recommended to me by somebody. There's the networking again, who otherwise knows about me, and they are seeking me out specifically. When they seek me out specifically, let me ask you a question. You don't have to know anything about the speaking business to be able to answer this question. You can just answer this with your inductive reasoning. Which approach do you think leads to an easier negotiation when it comes to my speaking fee? i.e. the money that someone pays me to speak. Which approach do you think leads to an easier conversation for me getting the money that I want? Either A, when I fill out a call for speakers and I'm one of 150 speakers applying for 15 spots, or B, when someone already knows who I am, they already know me and like my message, and they know they want me to speak at their event. Which one do you think leads to me getting the money that I want? Option A or option B? All right, all of you know the answer. The answer is option B, even if you know nothing about the speaking business. You can easily answer that question. Now, why is this? And what does this have to do with marketing? What does this have to do with location? Well, the answer is everything. That's the second answer. Answer to the first question is when someone is coming to you, looking specifically for you and specifically wanting you, usually you get what you want in those situations, most of the time. Why? I mean, this is simple human nature. This is simple power dynamics. When someone is coming to you, you have the leverage and you have the power position. Doesn't mean you get exactly what you want. They may not have it, but you're more likely to get what you want when someone is coming and seeking you out than when you are seeking them out. Why? Because you're the one who is being approached. So you have the high ground that you're standing on. Again, this is the location. Everybody understand this? So metaphorically, this is what I mean by location here in this first point. Your best business move when it comes to marketing, this is what I want all of you to take away from this. Your best business move is to do the work to position yourself in such a way that the people who are going to be your future clients and customers are coming to you and seeking you out rather than you having to go to them and seek them out. Let me offer a caveat here. Do not misconstrue my point. To hear what you want to hear and think that I'm saying never reach out to other people cold and try to drum up conversations. I just told you that I spent the first 5 years of my professional career, non-basketball professional career, doing exactly that. Okay, so I'm not telling you not to do it. And not for nothing, how I got started in professional basketball was doing exactly that. Nobody knew me. I did a whole bunch of cold reach outs to people who did not know who I was and had no idea that I was calling. And I sold myself to get my name established in the game. Okay, so I'm not telling you not to do it. What I'm saying is the ideal position is to not have to do that. And if you do it to start off, you shouldn't have to do it for long. You don't want to have to do it forever. All right, eventually you want to graduate to the point that they're coming to you and knocking on your door instead of you having to always knock on their door. It doesn't mean you don't do it at all. Again, in our business to this day, we still do reach outs. I still reach out to people who don't know me. I still do cold reach outs. I still do cold calls. We still send cold emails to people who don't know me, never heard of Work on Your Game, don't know about anything about any of this, to sell myself and or whatever it is that I'm offering. But I don't want 100% of my business to come from that. And I like the fact that I'm able to do it because this means it gives me an opportunity to drum up opportunities even when there may not be one. Okay, so this is just the salesperson in me. So you would rather strategically set yourself up to where they're coming to you. If they're coming to you, you have a whole lot more power. Okay, this is the location part of marketing. Point number 2, today's topic is marketing. Number 1 rule, location, location, location. Number 2, show up where you can stand out. One of my favorite marketing experts, a person who, if the best compliment I can give somebody is that if you said, Dre, you can only listen to or consume one person on a certain topic, who would it be? When it comes to everyday news, what's happening in the news every single day, if I can only listen to one person, I would choose Megyn Kelly. I like her stuff the most. When it comes to people talking about sports and what's happening in the sports world, when we talk about sports writers, many of whom are now podcasters and TV show hosts, if I had to pick one person, I'd probably go with Bill Simmons. He's my favorite to this day. When it comes to basketball, if I had to just watch one person play basketball, I can only watch their stuff. I can't watch anybody else's stuff. Who would I watch? I would choose Michael Jordan. When it comes to boxing, if I had to pick one fighter, I can only watch their fights, and I just have to watch all their fights over and over again, nobody else. I would probably go with Floyd Mayweather. When it comes to marketing, if I had to listen to one person talk about marketing, I can only go off their stuff, like all the emails that they've written, the letters they put out, the books they wrote, and the courses they created. I can't listen to anybody else's stuff on marketing. I had to pick one person. I would pick Dan Kennedy. Some of you may not know who Dan is because he's not an internet guy. So you're not going to find him on TikTok or Instagram. And he's old. He's probably in his 70s now and closer to death than he is birth. And he says it's out of his own mouth. Dan Kennedy's a pretty straight shooting type of guy, which is one reason why I like him. And Dan Kennedy is a guy who talks about showing up alone. He talks about this in his courses. I'm not taking damn near every course Dan Kennedy has ever made. I Years ago, it was all packaged up together and you could buy all of it in one package. You get all the stuff he ever made. I bought the package. So I've taken his courses 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And one of the things that Dan Kennedy talks about is this concept. He calls it show up alone. What does this mean? I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple examples. Any men listening to this, have you ever been in a space that was mostly male dominated? There's mostly men in the room, but then a handful or maybe even a single individual woman shows up into that space? You ever been in a situation like that? Tell me what happens. All of you know what happens. It doesn't matter the status of the men. Assuming that they're all heterosexual, we will assume that. It doesn't matter if they're married, single, doesn't matter. If you get a whole bunch of men in the space and then you put one woman in that space, what happens? How did the dynamics of the room change? Every man knows the answer to this. Every woman knows the answer to this. What happens? That one woman, regardless of who she is, she becomes very attractive in that space. Why is she very attractive? Is the woman actually attractive objectively? Maybe, maybe not. But she becomes very attractive as soon as she's in that space with only men. Why? Because she has no competition. All right, there are no other women in the space. And if all the men there are heterosexual, meaning they're interested in women, and there's only one woman, well, guess what? Everybody's looking at that one woman. And she doesn't even have to be attractive. Why? Because she has no competition. Now, if you put 50 women in the space, now that one woman, if she's not attractive, now she's ignored. But you take all the other women away and leave only one, she dominates. Why? Because she has no competition. She showed up alone. Do you understand? That's the way it works. All right, if there are men listening to this, they have these things these days called incels. These are men who are involuntarily celibate. That's what an incel is. Involuntary celibacy. Celibacy means not having sex. And involuntary means you're not having sex not because you choose to. You're not having sex even though you want to. So that's involuntary celibacy. So if you're an incel, but we removed all the heterosexual men from the world and all the women were still around and they want to reproduce, well, you wouldn't be an incel anymore. You wouldn't be an incel anymore, because your opportunities to have sex would multiply. They would actually, they would multiply exponentially. They would grow exponentially simply because every woman in the world who wants to have sex will have to go through you. All roads lead to you. You would get tired of having sex if you were the only heterosexual man available and there were a bunch of women around. All right, so you go from incel to, I don't know what you call that, Hugh Hefner, overnight. Why? Because you showed up alone. Because nobody else there. Does everybody understand this? It's the same thing in marketing. What did I just tell you about? When I was trying to get started in my professional speaking career, what did I do? I would fill out these calls for speakers. The problem with being in a call for speakers, and my mentor told me this at the very beginning of the game, is that the challenge of being in a call for speakers is that the event now has 100 speakers to choose from, and they only got to pick 10 speakers. So you're asking to get chosen amongst 100 other speakers. It's very hard to differentiate yourself when you're standing amongst 100 other people who are similar to you. But what if you go on an island and it's just you, and they come to your island and come find you? You have no competition. It's just you. So guess what? You have all the leverage. You have all the power, and you're probably going to get what you want, which means you get the money that you want and you get booked on your terms. Which one would you rather do? Be amongst the 100 trying to get chosen, or be the one that everybody comes and looks for? Would you rather be, who's the most famous model in the world today? Who's someone who's a famous model? Let's say Giselle Bundchen, however you pronounce her name, Giselle, or Tyra Banks, or who's another famous model? Christy Brinkley, or Sydney Sweeney. I don't think she's a model, she's an actress. But let's just take them, Beyonce, these folks, these women. Would you rather be one of them, or would you rather be a pretty girl who got discovered at the mall, who got asked to come to a casting call with 150 other pretty girls who got discovered at the mall too? Which one would you rather be? Which one do you think has a better chance of getting what they want on their terms, how they want it, at the price they want? Which one do you think has a better chance? All of you know the answer. It's the famous girl. Why does the famous girl have a better chance? Because the famous girl is not being grouped with 100 other people, and they're not being compared against 100 other people. You can put Beyonce in the room with the 100 girls who got found at the mall, but Beyonce is not amongst them because nobody's picking Beyonce because she's prettier than the girl to her left or the girl to her right. They're picking her because she is Beyonce. That's showing up alone. See, there's no copy for Beyonce. There is no replacement for Beyonce. If you buy a ticket to a Beyonce concert, and I mentioned a couple days ago, a friend of mine had posted a video of being at a Beyonce concert. Let's say Beyonce got sick that day and she couldn't perform at her show. Could they still do the show and just have a replacement do all Beyonce songs? I mean, there's plenty of women who know her music, right? All right, could they have a replacement for Beyonce and still have the show? The answer is hell no, because there's only one Beyonce. That's the reason why her tickets can be $1,000. Not because there's a girl who's going to get up there and sing and dance. There are plenty of girls who can sing and dance. There's only one Beyonce. That's showing up alone. So if you're not reading between the lines here, this means establishing a brand around who you are such that people are seeking out you, the person. They want you. They want your brand. And this does not mean world famous. You don't have to be Beyonce famous. You only got to be famous to the people who are buying from you. Right. Being famous to the people who are buying from you might mean you're famous to 1,000 people. Well, if you had 1,000 customers, would you have a good day? I think so. Now, you don't need 100 million people to know you. Now, you don't need to be a Kardashian. You just need to be famous to the people who you're interested in selling to, which can be an extremely small niche depending on who it is. You go to a dentist convention, there's a famous dentist. There's a dentist who walks in there who's famous to the other dentists. Now take him out of that convention and put him in a grocery store. Nobody cares who he is. Nobody knows who he is. But put him in that convention, he's the man. All right, does that matter? Yes, it does. Is he the highest paid dentist in the room? Probably. You understand? So showing up alone doesn't mean you need to be world famous. I'm using world famous people because all of you know who they are. But don't think this means you have to be that. You don't have to even come close. You want all roads to lead to you. And you could do very well business-wise simply because buyers are not looking at any other options other than you. Wouldn't that be a great way to do business if everybody you sold to doesn't see another choice but buying from you? You know what happens when people look at you that way? That means you have what we call price elasticity. You know what that means? That means you can charge whatever you want because people have no choice but to pay it because they don't want anything other than you. Beyonce has price elasticity. All right, go try to hire Beyonce to come sing at your birthday party. You'll see. All right, just as I told you on point number 1. This is something that anybody can do. You can do this strategically. You can do this by design. This does not happen randomly. It does not happen by luck. And no, you don't need to be Beyonce. Okay? Use the Beyonce example. Don't think you need to be that famous. You don't have to be anywhere close to that. 1% of Beyonce can get you where you want to go. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is number 1 rule of marketing. Location, location, location. Number 3. Remember what branding is about. All right, what is branding, ladies and gentlemen? Branding is about owning space in another person's mind. That's what branding is owning space in another person's mind as far as who you are, what you do, and what you bring to the table. When you have a strong brand, that means your name, your image, your likeness, or that of your company or your thing or your system or your process or your framework, whatever it is, your company, it owns real estate in the minds of the audience. It owns real estate in the minds of the public. And because you own that real estate, anytime anybody thinks of you, they think of that real estate, or they think of that real estate, they think about you. For example, if I say Serena Williams, what do you think about? Most of you think about tennis. If I say Tiger Woods, you think golf. They have a brand. If I say golf, I'm going to mention something, you tell me the first name that comes to mind. If I say golf, you might say Tiger Woods. If I say tennis, you'll probably say Serena. Say basketball, you may say LeBron or Curry or Kobe or Michael Jordan, but it's a handful of people you think of. Why? Because they have a brand. They own real estate in the minds of the public when it comes to a specific thing. Are you catching my drift here? What does this mean for you? It means you can do the exact same thing. Real estate that you own is 100% dependent on how you present yourself, what you share, and what you show to your audience. Between 2005 and 2015, I owned real estate in the minds of aspiring basketball players who want to learn how to practice or anyone who was interested in basketball that was shared through the internet. I owned that real estate. Now, there are a lot of content creators out there today who were inspired to become what they became through watching me. And a lot of players who learned from me the same way. Because I occupied that real estate. I owned that real estate. Today, I have a different real estate in the minds of people, a completely different base of people, because I'm doing a different thing. And there is some overlap. Some people who know me for the basketball are still tuned into things that I do to this day. And there are others who were there back then, they have left because they were looking for the basketball, that's all they wanted. There are others who were not there back then and have arrived, many of you, because you weren't looking for basketball, but when I started putting out what I put out now, you said, okay, this is what I want. So the point is, real estate is about occupying the minds of people individually based on what they see or what they hear coming from you. And those are things all based on what you decide to put in front of them, because they can't get a picture of you, an image of you in their minds without something that you have supplied for them. You got to give them something to have in their minds. So whatever you put out is what they see. So you wear a t-shirt and a fitted hat and some basketball shorts, they're going to see you that way. You put on a suit and a tie, they're going to see you that way. You control that. You control the way you're being perceived. So you can occupy the real estate that you can alter, the real estate that you occupy in other people's mind, decide based on the way that you put yourself out there. Based on the way that you show yourself, you can control how people are seeing you and what people are thinking about you based on the conversation that you tell them to have about you, which is all based on what you put out there. Now, again, there are certain things you can put out there that you can't really control how people decide to talk about it, but you do control what you put out there. And you can do your part to encourage the conversation to go a certain way. All right, factor in, again, I've done this thing in basketball to business, and you can factor in mindset, current events. I'll talk about that sometimes. And even though those are not my main, current events are not my main focus, some people still identify me with it simply because there aren't so many people willing to talk about certain things in public that I am. The whole point is I'm occupying real estate, and real estate is all about location. So if you want to change the real estate that you occupy in the mind of another person, then you need to think about what are you putting out there that's causing them to think about you in a certain way. All that said, let's recap today's class, which is number one rule of marketing: location, location, location. Again, this is borrowed from real estate, and I'm using this as a metaphor. Number one, big piece of marketing is about how and where you show up. When you show up in certain places, you get perceived a certain way just because you're there. Doesn't even matter what you do. Just because you're there, people assume some things about you. All you familiar with the concept of you are the company you keep. All you've heard of the law of association. You become the average of the people you associate with. So if you show up in a certain place with certain people, there's going to be a certain perception that comes with that. All of you understand that. Point number two, show up where you can stand out. Dan Kennedy calls it showing up alone. Show up in a place where there are not 30 other options that look and sound just like you for you to be compared to, because now you become a commodity, and commodity drives down price. And number three, remember what branding is all about. It's all about owning real estate in the mind of your audience. Was about when they think of you, they think of what? And when they think of X, they should think of you. What is that thing? You need to fill in for X. Just like in algebra, solve for X. What is X? What do you want people to think about when they mention your name? That's how you start to figure out what location, what real estate you want to carve out, what you want to own in other people's minds. Inside of Work on Your Game University, I coach you on doing these things, putting them together strategically, having a mindset around how to use this all the time, building a system around it, and then executing so we can produce your desired results in these areas from these things. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Work on your game. Dre, all